is we're in a performance industry. There's a lot that goes on behind the result.
And I stopped posting around my story and my life. I was just making it educational, boring stuff, just because I couldn't share what was really going on. I just realised at that moment how utterly artificial and fickle this world that we're living in social media.
One of the big challenges in our industry, it actually comes from a lack of speaking the truth.
We just have difficulty having those uncomfortable conversations because there's a massive amount of people that have a fear of rejection, judgment, isolation.
My job is not to manage other people's emotions, and I've had that as my mantra for about 12 months.
People hold themselves responsible for other people's emotions. More than often, people don't have the skills to say it in a way that isn't offensive. I broke my silence at age 39 because I just couldn't contain it anymore. It's the silence that does the damage. It might just be telling a parent or telling a therapist, as long as they are speaking enough to not have this contained, because the silence causes the shame, and it's the shame that erodes them from the inside, and that's the part that people aren't even aware of. Like, you have to go into a darker place to come out to a happier place.
Hi, it's Matt Giggs. This is Estate Agent Showdown, a very, very different, unfiltered conversation with Angie McQuillin. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Do you like my new set?
It's bloody great. Love it.
You're the first.
Woohoo.
Not the last, I hope. It's great. I'm really loving it, Ollie. You've done a great job, buddy. So thank you for getting this set up. We're going to have a screen back here at some point. But this is a really different show for today. And if you're listening to this or watching this, you may ask, well, who is Angie McQuillin? If you've been on LinkedIn, I'd say you might have struggled to have avoided you over the years, because you've been quite prominent on there.
I have been, and not so much these days.
No.
In the olden days, I was on there a lot.
We may sort of dip into some of that, but I just want to say thank you. You've travelled quite a distance to be here today.
No, it's nice. It's nice to meet you in the flesh once.
Yeah.
All our contact's been through Zoom, right?
Yeah. So Angie and I got to work together, 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And I reached out to you after watching a lot of the stuff that you were doing back then, and make that quite clear. It was some really good work on my personal journey, struggles that I was going through at the time, and you were brilliant. And we've stayed in touch ever since. And I've now been watching what you've been doing over recent years, which we can go into if you want. But I think a really interesting part of why I wanted to bring you on today is from the conversations that I have in and around the industry, and just with agents that I work with day to day, is we're in a performance industry. And I sometimes think it's performance that we tend to focus on externally. I think a lot of our efforts and energies in our industry go on how we need to show up and how we need to be, and achievement, results. I've just been on a call this morning with 3 guys, and they're so result orientated. But there's a lot that goes on behind the result. And I want to really dig into that today, because if you're listening or watching, everybody's got a story. Everyone's got a past. Everyone's been through challenges near enough. And the multitude or the magnitude of those things can sometimes be left somewhere in you, and it can actually make quite a big difference as to why maybe you show up in a certain way. So I want to explore some of that with you today, if that's all right.
Sounds good.
So there you go. So let's get started. Well, I'm going to kind of dip into our industry first. Estate agency, believe it or not, hasn't got a great reputation.
Really?
I didn't know whether you knew that.
I didn't know that.
So when I first approached you and you knew I was an estate agent, you didn't dismiss me there and then. You must have seen some kind of value in working with me at the time. But yeah, essentially one of the big challenges in our industry, it actually comes from a lack of speaking the truth. Working with clients day to day, managing expectations, probably using assertiveness in communication has probably never been as important as it is today, because in our industry, the market has changed somewhat from being a seller's market to a buyer's market. Yet people like to go on the market and set their expectations really high. And then gradually over a period of weeks, the agent's job is generally to just drop their expectations right the way down instead of just being upfront.
Yeah,
So I want to dig into a little bit of that. So my first question really is, the estate agency is essentially a profession that's built on difficult conversations. Why do so many people, I suppose, in business or in our industry, avoid them?
Well, firstly, you've obviously you're background is estate agency. I don't think it's estate agency specific, because
No.
I've worked in all different industries through from, when I say I've worked in it, not me personally, my clients have come from marketing, IT, estate agency, whatever it might be, but they all come with the same thing. So to me, what you're describing is a human thing, a human issue, and we just have difficulty having those uncomfortable conversations because there's a massive amount of people that have a fear of rejection, fear of judgment, fear of isolation, fear of being seen in a different way, and losing people's respect, losing people's, I don't know, whatever it might be, that they're not going to be seen in the same way. So whether you're working in a state agency or you're working any form of leadership, I think one of the hardest things is the fear of all these different things, like the rejection, the judgment, not being liked as much, all the stuff that leads into people pleasing and makes people bite the tongue more.
Yeah, I mean, I always ask people if we're in the property industry or the people industry, and we really are in the people industry. Yeah. It's a human 100%. Industry. It's emotions. I mean, emotions are everywhere, nearly in every conversation, and handled in the right way, it can make a significant difference to the performance of the agent, but also the outcome for our clients as well. So just coming into that sort of emotional management, if you like. How do people, I mean, I don't believe people just deliberately avoid the difficult conversation. Do they? Or is it a subconscious thing?
I think it's both.
Yeah.
I think it's both. I mean, there's many times I've heard people say, I really need to have this conversation, but I can't, or I won't, or I'll do it later, or they find another reason to do it at a different time. So it's very conscious. It's not always unconscious.
Yeah.
What might be driving the resistance is normally the unconscious bit. Yeah. They'll just say, well, I'm scared of the way they're going to react, or I'm scared of the way they're going to see me. But actually what they're really scared of is they're going to be rejected, or they're going to be judged, or the other person might not like them as much. But people don't think of it like that. They just feel the resistance and then make sense of the resistance in their own head for something else. So I think it's two-pronged in terms of it being conscious, and the drivers are normally unconscious. Okay. Unless you do a bit of work and you become more aware of your own drivers. Where
does the work start to build up that awareness?
Well, just recognising that you're not doing it.
Yeah.
So whatever's driving the lack of doing it, you'll notice the fact that you're not doing it. So it's the lack of behaviour that people go, I need to be more spoken. So, for example, lots of my clients would have issues with speaking up in meetings, or raising a controversial opinion, or having to tell somebody that the work that they're delivering isn't of, high enough standard or whatever. All this, telling people that the way that they're operating in the work and conducting themselves isn't okay. But people then, you risk offending people, upsetting people, you're dealing with other people's insecurities, you're dealing with other people's reactivity. And that's also a sticking point, because one person might feel absolutely fine to say the same thing They've got one thing to say, but saying it to one person feels safe, and saying it to somebody else doesn't feel safe because they're preempting the other person's reactivity, or how they're going to go home and cry themselves to sleep because they got told that the report wasn't good enough or whatever. So actually, it's not necessarily just the behaviour, it's normally a judgment on the other person and how they're going to receive it, and then what, as a consequence, is going to be how they're going to be judged as a result as well. Does that make sense?
That does make complete sense. So in other words, what you're trying to do is temper the situation, manage the situation, judge the situation.
Preempt it.
To preempt it.
Which is why many people don't think they've got a problem with being assertive, because when you talk about assertiveness, they'll remember the times that they have said it, the times that they have sat in a meeting and gone, well, I think we need to do it this way and abandon this way. But then you put them in another meeting with a bunch of other people and they'll stay mute because they're so scared of how other people will react. Or maybe the people in the meeting are more senior, or they're the stakeholders, or they're the investors, and they're too scared of losing that relationship because there's higher stakes to have that conversation with those people. So it's not just a case of this is what you do in every situation. It's like, let's pinpoint the areas when you're not delivering. Let's pinpoint the areas where you're doing it in a different way, or you have more resistance. And that's where my work has come in historically, to identify what's the difference between that team and that team. Why is it you can speak in front of them and not in front of them? What are the stories that go through your head? And that's when you start digging into the unconscious bits that most people aren't even aware of themselves.
I bet that's been quite revealing.
Yeah, well, it's actually quite patterned and themed from my perspective.
Tell us more about that.
Well, it always comes down to the same things. I'm scared of how they're going to react, or I don't want to upset them. And people hold themselves responsible for other people's emotions, of course. But then on the flip side of it, more than often, people don't have the skills to say it in a way that isn't offensive.
Yeah.
So it isn't just about detaching from being responsible from other people. It's also about, I know that I can deliver this in a way that is much more likely to be received well. And if I can deliver it well and it's still not received well, then that's a reflection of them, of their insecurity. Whereas if I'm just going to dive in and say, do you know what, you're rubbish and you're a dickhead or something really rude.
Yeah, the how's quite important, right?
Exactly, the how is massive. So first of all, you have to help them with what does the how look like? And then if you're still getting the resistance, then you get into the insecurities.
Is there like a structure that you follow around that if you was advising someone on the how? So for example, is there kind of like a way of helping someone to be more assertive?
Yeah, so the key way really to get to the nuts and bolts of it, I mean, there's a lot more detail to it than I'm about to describe here. Of course, yeah. We haven't got that long, have we, I suppose? What are you saying? But if you're just going to go into somebody and just say, you're doing this or you're doing that or this isn't good enough, the other person is bound to put their guard up. And as soon as that barrier's up, you're up against that resistance wall and you're up against the reactivity, and immediately it can only start getting more frictional. Whereas if you go into this and say something like, I interpret it like this, or this is how I see it, have I got this wrong or what am I missing? Or rather than you're not listening to me, you might say something like, I don't feel heard. Because it's not necessarily, if you say you're not listening, you're saying it about what their intentions are, what they're doing. They might actually give you their full attention, but they give you their full attention in a different way.
Yeah.
But you're interpreting it as they're not listening. So to actually say, look, I don't feel like I'm being heard at the moment. Are we on the same page or whatever? It gives you some room to kind of get into the nuts and bolts of why you're experiencing it in that way. And they might say, well, why don't you think I'm listening to you? So, well, because you're on your phone. So, well, yeah, I'm checking, I'm actually typing it into my phone as you're talking. Yeah. Oh, right, sorry, I thought you were texting. And immediately you highlight the discrepancy. Yeah. But if you go in and say you're not listening, you're going to create that immediate barrier of the guard. So a lot of it is about, this is my experience, this is how I see it, this is how I'm interpreting it, this is how I'm feeling about it. And the beauty of that is, as I always used to say to my clients, by saying this is how I interpret it, you give yourself the wiggle room. That's good. To be corrected. Yeah. Because they might then say
there might be something you don't know.
Exactly. Yeah. And they might say something that might change how you interpret it altogether. And then it gives you the wiggle room to go, well, now you said that, I have a different interpretation, and now this is how I see it. So it creates this ongoing movement within the conversation rather than absolute and factual and this is what it is, and not an attack on them. It's this is how I'm seeing it, correct me if I'm wrong kind of thing. Yeah, I love that. You can have very difficult conversations in this way from this is my experience rather than you are, it's this is how I'm recognising it. It shows up across everything, doesn't it? Like, yes, absolutely. This is why you're here, because I think there's a lot of patterns that just go across everything. So that could show up in someone's relationship at home. Oh God, yeah, that's the worst one. Yeah. That's the most prominent one. Okay, tell us a bit more. Well, you get more domestic arguments. The person that you're closest to is typically the person that you feel safest to. So for example, if you're at work, you know that if you speak in a particular way to your boss, to your colleague, you're much more likely to get rejected from them because they're not going to take that shit from you. Yeah. Whereas if you go home and say it to your partner, they're not just going to walk out the door if you're married or you've got 3 kids together with 2 dogs. They're not going to say, don't speak to me like that, it's over. Yeah. So people feel safer to, I'm not saying it's okay, I'm not endorsing it. I'm saying people generally feel safer for the lack of rejection, which is why they feel safer to behave in that way towards somebody closer to them than they would do at work, because the rejection is so much easier. But that technique that you just shared could be practiced across different levels of your... It's a game changer in close relationships. I think you've shared an absolute bit of gold there already, to be honest, because it's the start I often find is the hardest. Yes. It's how do I engineer this conversation? How do I begin it? Because there are walls. We haven't, for argument's sake, there's someone difficult in a team, or you've got, that's a prime example that I see in a lot of leaders that I work with. It's that person, and there's a judgment both ways, and it becomes really toxic and a real challenge. And then the start of the conversation just goes badly. Yeah, I agree. And what normally happens in those types of those conflicts, should we say, or those difficult conversations that don't go well, one person might start it with, you've done this, as opposed to, this is how I saw it. Yeah. The other person will go, well, you did that. And you go, well, yeah, but you did this. Well, yeah, but you did that. And next thing you know, they're fighting to be the biggest victim. Yeah. Who's the one that's worst off? Who's had it harder from the other person? Yeah. And I've never seen that argument ever end in this great big hug, and everybody's resolved it, and everybody leaves the room feeling like they've been heard and seen and listened to. So actually going into something like that, you don't start it on the wrong foot. You're simply talking about your personal experience in that particular thing that you're talking about, rather than attacking the other person.
Yeah, and it's like I said, it goes across everything. You've got clients in our industry who, you know, it can be very easy to be a you and them, and who's the biggest victim, and so on and so forth. So yeah, it leads me really quite nicely onto some of the stuff that I've been watching you do on YouTube.
Oh yeah, recent thing.
Yeah. So tell us about your YouTube channel first, because I think it is very niche, as we've discussed. But I think if there's just one person that watches this that finds their way there and gets a lot of help, I think it's really important.
It's already happened. I've had a few like direct emails, and I've had a few people commenting on the thread, and I'm also getting trolled a lot as well, which it comes with the territory. The channel basically is going to either help lots of people, or I'm just going to get ripped apart from it. So I set it up about...
It's that stark.
It is kind of that end of the spectrum. There's lots of support, but it will inevitably trigger some people. But it will also help some people. So just for context, for people that don't know what this is about, the last 6 weeks, I've gone hell for leather creating this YouTube account. The amount of times I've done a video and gone, that's not good enough. I've slipped into a bit of perfectionism, and one of them is probably the most important video. I've had literally about 15 attempts at it, and I think I've finally got the one I'm going to launch. But anyway, but long story short, I went through the justice system, spent 6 years in the justice system.
Yeah.
I was seriously sexually assaulted when I was 16 by a guy who grew me from the age of 10, basically a child molester. By the age of 14, I was in a sexual relationship with him. By the age of 16, I was violently raped by him. And then I was coercively controlled for about another 5 years. We didn't stay together all the time, but my life was hell for remaining about another 4 or 5 years, and until I finally escaped by fleeing the country, literally. But I broke my silence at age 39 because I just couldn't contain it anymore. That's the cost of silence that I talk about a lot, and the damage that it brought by holding it back and keeping it a secret. Went to the police at 39, spent 6 years in the justice system, which involved 6 years of waiting, 3 rearranged court dates, 2 rearranged court dates, 2 court cases. So I had a hung jury on the first one. Went into court again, had to go back on stand a second time, and he was convicted within an hour. When it was handled properly by the CPS, he was convicted within an hour, and he got sentenced to 6 years in prison. So, so that's basically what I've created it around. The whole channel is around living as a silent survivor, living as a survivor of serious sexual assault, what it's like to go into court, what it's like to be on stand, what the courts look like on the inside, the judgment that you receive, the comments that you will get, the misconceptions in society, the difficulties you will have emotionally, you know, what people might think of you afterwards, like the necessary side of speaking out and the impact it will have on you emotionally, and anything that I can think of that comes with living as a silent survivor and going through the justice system is going on that channel. But it's naturally quite triggering, because you're talking about rape, and you're talking about, you know, serious sexual assault, and you're talking about suicidal thoughts, and you're talking about sending somebody down. But then other people get triggered. Like, yeah, but what about all the people that are innocent? And I'm not here to cause an argument. I'm here to talk about what it's like to be a silent survivor, because there's no voices out there doing that. And just to finish off, for a rant around it too much,
that's all right.
The key thing that drove me to do it is because as I was in the justice system, I was constantly looking for information. What's it like on stand? How aggressive are the barristers going to be? What do the courts look like? What's the process? What happens next? I just had so many questions. And I looked high and low, and I could find 1 or 2 videos on YouTube, like smallish videos where a lady had just said, yeah, I went on stand, or it was like a 10-minute video, and I watched it about 10 times kind of thing, because it was the only thing I could find. And I thought, if I'd have come across my channel when I was going into court, I would have binged watched it, because I would have felt understood, and I would have known more about what to expect. Now, I'm not saying what I had will be everybody's story, but it was something for me to get an idea of what it's like and how you feel and what type of things to expect from it. But there was literally nothing out there. I was like, well, if it doesn't exist, I'll create my own. Yeah. But it does come with a lot of pushback, and people telling me you're just attention seeking, and you're just doing this for the wrong reasons. And it's like, this is the problem that we face in society, that if you're a survivor of going to war and you get your legs blown off because you've gone to war, I don't know what that's like. I can imagine it's horrendous. But if you're that type of person, if you're a survivor of cancer, if you're a survivor of, I don't know, like some form of depression, but then you talk about it, people generally applaud that. But for some reason, when it comes to serious sexual
That's a
assault,
really good point.
if you speak out about it, you are just an attention seeker. You're just somebody that is doing it for the wrong reasons. You're doing it for, I can't even think of the other things I said. Oh yeah, you're unhinged. And the expectation is you will be silent. And once the justice system is over, you will return to being silent, because God forbid you speak out about it, because that's just a dirty thing to do. So I'm there saying, well, troll me then. I'm going to show you what it's like to talk about it, and you can hit me all you want. You can throw your tomatoes at me, because meanwhile I'm getting emails from, there's a guy that I met through LinkedIn, not like that, he's another survivor, and he's just been through the justice system as well. I'll keep his name obviously confidential, but he messaged me because we know each other online obviously, and he just said, I'm so glad I watched your videos, because coming into court, he came up against his abuser, similar to what I did. When you're waiting outside court, the person that offended you and caused the offence against you and abused you is sat 2-3 metres away from you. We're all just sat there like that, twiddling your thumbs, waiting for the doors to open. You sit in the same gallery with their supporters and your supporters together. People don't know that this is coming in. I came in and have to go through a metal detector, and I was there. It's like an airport. You take your belt off, shoes, bag, empty it all out. And I'm stood there in the crucifix position. I get told to turn around so they can scan me. And as I turn around, I'm facing the guy that violated me. And he's like 2 metres away from me. Then I have to walk towards him. There's a table as big as that with a box on it with all my possessions. And he stood on the other side of it. And I'm just stood there going, oh my God, I'm frantically getting my belt on and putting my shoes on and throwing my coat over me. The police have been cornered by a security guard for, like, they're being skanks. That's the process. I looked to my brother, and he was elsewhere he was busy getting through the security stuff, and I'm just stood there on my own with the guy who violated me and his supporter that was there with him, and I'm on my own doing this. And this is why are the CPS inviting people to be there at the same time? Anyway, I've gone on off and rant. My point is, people are hearing this on my videos, and then they're going into court prepared. And they're going into court with the awareness that I'm going to come across the person that assaulted me probably 6 times a day all week. Another lady said on one of her comments, I'm so glad you're putting your story out there. There's a lot of us out here trying to heal. And that cut me. I remember being reduced to tears, going, there's so many people out there trying to heal. I posted about it on LinkedIn, and I got about 200 emails of people saying, well done, keep pushing. But it was like my sister, my mum, my best friend, my niece, my auntie, and Me Too's as well. Everybody knows somebody that's gone through this, but they're just silent.
Why do you think it is? I mean, just on this subject, because we've brought it to create awareness around what you do. There's a couple of questions that I've got, and we'll come back to the first question, which is courage, and how much courage it must have taken, and how did you find that? But the bit that you mentioned just a minute ago, which is true, when people are applauded for sharing stories of overcoming mental health issues or various other situations and have been a survivor of some description, but this one seems to be forbidden. And I'm trying not to be naive. I'm thinking, why is that?
I mean, I can't give you a definite why.
But
I can only give my personal opinion,
of course.
Obviously. But in my opinion, we are born into a society where the moment we start talking about those things, if you go back into the setup of the whole justice system, for somebody just to walk into court and say, he did this to me, and everybody go, oh, okay then, and they could just get sent down would be ridiculous. So it was designed hundreds and hundreds of years ago, where the assumption is the woman has to be basically proven to be wrong. Yeah. So that's why immediately it's the only... If somebody got mugged, you're not going to say, what were they wearing? If somebody got beaten up one night, they're not going to say, yeah, but how much did they have to drink? I mean, that might come into it, but often the assumption is, oh, there must have been an altercation first, or something must have gone wrong first. But they don't immediately ask questions like, what were you wearing when you get mugged? Or how much did you have to drink when you get mugged? Or, why were you there in the first place when you get mugged and stuff? But when it comes to serious sexual assault, it's ingrained into our DNA that it's the immediate assumption, oh yeah, but what was she doing there? For example, I remember reading a story, there was about a 13 and a 15-year-old girl was 13, boy was 15, and they were out in a park one night or something like that. It was about midnight, 1 o'clock. Anyway, the story was a group of young men in the early 20s came across, started beating at the boy, he ran for his life, and then all 3 of them raped the girl. Now, when I was reading the thread, so many people were saying things like, what was she doing there at that time of night? What was she doing in the park at midnight? What was she wearing at the time? Or how come he ran off? I was thinking, okay, I'm not going to say that those are horrendous questions, because maybe parents might want to know where the kids are at that time. However, why is it our freaking first question? Why is our question not, as the first question, what is a group of young men in the 20s doing raping a 13-year-old girl?
That's
Do you
right.
know what I mean? That should be our first question. But instead, we make it, what are they doing there at that time? So there's always the immediate assumption that the focus becomes the blame on the survivor, rather than we take the assumption, we almost live with the assumption that people are like this. We're going to just let this happen, and that's just the way of the world. So therefore, it's up to everybody else, and it's their responsibility if it happens. They might, oh yeah, it must have been horrible for her, but what was she doing there? Oh yeah, but you went into the woods anyway, but you went into the park anyway, but what were you wearing? It's like, I don't care if you're walking down the street naked. It doesn't give you the right to do that.
No, it's missing the point by quite a long way.
But we live in this society that is dedicated to protecting the person who does it as opposed to the person who received it. And once that is set as a theme, it goes into all the other judgments that you've just mentioned.
That courage that you had to tap into wouldn't have just come overnight. How did that courage appear? Like to be able to look something that had happened a long time ago and actually look at it head on and go, I've got to do this. Do you mind me asking?
No, of course not. Almost everybody that asks me this question assumes that it's courage. And it's not. It wasn't courage. It wasn't courage for me. It got to breaking point.
Okay.
It wasn't like I just went, oh God, yeah, that thing I forgot about. Bloody hell, I better go and sort that out and go down to the police and tell them that thing I forgot about 23 years ago. It was something I'd thought about for 23 years that I'd built and built and built. And I've said this in my videos, even on YouTube. It wasn't like I just woke up one day and thought, right, today's the day I'm going to go and do this thing. It was a very conscious decision. If I don't do this, I'm actively choosing to spend the rest of my life in a really, really bad place. I'm going to implode, or I'm going to be depressed because I'm going to have to suppress it. You have to live your life differently when you're holding something very significant back. And I just couldn't live like that anymore. So thinking that it's bravery almost gives the impression that there's two logical decisions of choices that I have. So there's a decision of two options. And it's so much not. I mean, technically it's true. I could have chosen to be depressed for the rest of my life, but I chose to save myself.
Yeah.
But the only way I could do that was to actually let it out and be honest about what had happened and not contain it. So did it take courage? Yeah, I was very, very nervous doing it, but the alternative would have been worse. I didn't know what I was walking into, but I thought anything, and I repeat, anything is going to be better than the way that I'm living at the moment. So I didn't actually feel like I had a choice. Although I do understand on paper how people look at that and think, oh, you chose to go to the police. Well, yeah, because I chose to not do something bloody stupid if I hadn't have gone to the police. Yeah. So it took courage to fight my way through it. Sometimes, don't get me wrong, it was never an easy journey. But the promise that I had to make with myself first is once I open this can of worms, no matter how difficult it gets, no matter how many punches I take, I am not dropping out. The CPS might reject me. The police might close my case, and I can't control that, but I will not be walking away. So the hardest part for me was getting to the point where no matter what is thrown at me, I'm not going anywhere. I'm staying in this until the last day. But it genuinely didn't feel like courage. I guess it took a bit of that on the side, but honestly, the decision was about I cannot contain it anymore. I don't have a choice. I've got to do it.
And this is where the cost of silence starts.
Yeah.
And many people won't have maybe faced the same challenges you've faced in that respect, but they'll be facing their own
demons,
and silencing them.
Yep.
And we've all got them.
I agree. We all do.
They're just different. And it's a real... I mean, I've written down a question about this, but what do you think silence is costing people today? I put people in business, because this is a business podcast to a degree, but much of what happens in business is a reflection of what happens on the inside.
Yes.
And I think the more people really get their heads on the fact that you've got to do more work on yourself than you have your business, they begin to realise that, like, it's ongoing work in progress.
100%.
So those costs that you weighed up, where it was there were just really two choices. And that was one, which wasn't obviously going to be a healthy end, and the other, I'm just going to have to look at this in the eye and go,
do it.
Mm-hmm. Well, first of all, can I say, as a friend now, and also someone that I've got to know over the years, and I didn't know obviously until we spoke recently. Well done, seriously. I know you don't need me to say well done, but I'm just glad you've done it, because that must have been harrowing, to be honest. And what's really even more harrowing, well, I suppose, it's just the process that...
The process is grim. There's no two ways about it.
Yeah. Like, if you'd have known that was the process...
Would I have done it?
Yeah.
Is that your question? Yes, I would. In fact, it would have made it easier, because I'd have known what to expect. It was the not knowing what to expect that made it hard.
Which is now why you're doing what you're doing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So there's a lady I spoke to recently, and she's only been in the process about 6 weeks. I just want to get on with it, and she hasn't even had an interview by the police yet, or any contact with the police yet. I'm obviously not going to mention who this is.
No, of course.
But she, I've warned her this could take years, and with that knowledge, you can start preparing for the longevity of it, and you can prepare for the punches, and you can prepare for what's happening next. It's the feeling of walking down a road in a blindfolded way, getting punched by a system that you're not familiar with. That is the hardest part for me. Was the hardest part for me.
And when you kind of look back at what you've just been through, do you get to look back at it much, or is it kind of like, I'm just kind of moving on now and I don't want to look back, or what's...
No, I look back because I know that there's 80,000 people in the queue waiting to go into court right now.
Right.
For serious sexual assault.
Okay.
And all of those people, I was one of them for 6 years.
Right.
And they're probably struggling with the same things I was. And that's just the people in the system. And most people don't even go to the police to get themselves in. Exactly. They don't even go to the police to begin with. So only if that just shows how many people are actually assaulted in this way, because if there's 80,000 people waiting and only this amount of people go through the system, how many people are receiving this treatment? So that's why the channel is now being designed around not just going through the justice system, but how it is to live as a silent survivor.
So do you feel more freedom, or some kind of, I don't even want to call it relief, I'm trying to think of what the right thing is I'm trying to get across here. Liberate. That's probably. There you go. I knew you'd find a better word than my ones. But is there an element of liberation?
Yeah,
now?
There is. Not because it's not about wanting everybody to know. I don't want to walk around with a big sign on my head or be labelled as the girl that got raped. It's more around if you're not speaking. Well, I'm a talker. I heal by talking. I help other people heal, and that's how I feel better. And it's always helped me, and it put me in good stead. But for me, it felt like I was carrying this dark, dirty, horrible secret around with me all the time that I couldn't talk about, which therefore amplified that feeling of it being that way. Because if I wasn't able to talk about it, then I'm effectively saying this is a shameful thing that I'm suppressing. And everybody that refuses to talk about it is basically saying this part of me is shameful and nobody can ever know about it. So actually by owning it, because I wasn't responsible for what happened, I was groomed from the age of 10, and he was a lot stronger than me at 27 when I was a 16-year-old girl, you know. So I'm not going to carry that shame anymore, and that's the liberation. But it's not like, hey, everybody, I want to tell you the secret. It's like, if you know about it, cool. If you don't know about it, cool. I don't care, but it's not a secret. It's just there. If you know, you don't. I don't care. But it's not something that I have to actively hide away from the universe anymore and hide away from people knowing.
Energy that you must...
it's horrible to contain it. Horrible.
And I think for anyone watching or listening to this, if there is anyone who has a similar situation that's happened in their past, they can find you on YouTube for...
Angie McQuillin, Unsilenced.
There you go. So you've got that straight away. I do feel like it's actually a big, a big situation that does hold a lot of people back, silencing. And it is a fear, isn't it, of being judged or putting your head above the parapet or whatever it might actually be. And it's really strange. I was talking to Ollie the other day, and we're going to do this talk in Ireland next week. How many times would you say I've changed my talk, Ollie?
I don't know if you're settled one yet.
And I'm supposed to have the slides done by tomorrow, you know.
Okay.
And I'm not really a slides kind of guy.
Okay.
In fact, fucking hate slides because I end up losing my way. But if I don't have slides, guess what?
You do what I do, and you go off on tangents and rant, which I've noticed I've done at least 3 times in this interview. So yeah, I'm trying to bring that in.
I just think sometimes, like, and I suppose what I'm getting from that is I've just got to be confident in the subject and believe in what I'm talking about and be free to move around it. And that's actually scary and liberating. The scary bit is if I mess up, right? If I forget something or don't say something, but then I've done it enough to know that I probably won't. But I think a lot of us put these constraints on ourselves, and you know, when I talk to people that are in business and they're running companies or they're agents, whatever, it's not really, there's nothing really externally that they can't solve quite fast. You know, if you want to list more houses, there's ways of doing it. We can go through that. You're either not speaking to enough people, not helping enough people, or there's some elements of the way in which you're doing it that we can work on. But more often than not, they're the constraints that they've put on themselves, the story that they've told themselves. And how important is that for people just listening to what we're talking about, is that it sounds to me like you had a story that you were kind of keeping under wraps there, but it was playing out and showing up and dropping your energy and all of those different things.
Yeah.
And now that story has been told, it gives you the liberation to move forward, but not only do that, but to really help people in an area that I'm completely unaware, obviously, because I've not been through the same experience, but a harrowing situation, and your ability now to be able to provide support, help, guidance, direction in a place where there is very, very little by the sounds of it. It's created something that's pretty amazing in a weird kind of way. Like, and that's where if you're free, if you are able to be, I mean, we talked about assertiveness earlier and the ability to speak your truth, if you like. It's something that it feels like we're a long way off of achieving with most people in life. Like, it feels like most people are just going to sleepwalk through life, really, and never really share their trueness, their true story, who they really are, because they're constantly worried about judgment. Yeah. And is social media really a compounder of that? Have you found?
A compounder of what? Sorry.
Like, it's even more fearful because even more people can criticise you, if you like, or push you back in a box.
Yeah, and I think I'll start with, I think everybody's different, so there's no expectation on people if they have gone through something very difficult
to do the same thing,
that they should have to talk about it. As long as, in my opinion, as long as they're talking to the right people, if they need to talk, it's the silence that does the damage. It might just be telling a parent or telling a therapist or telling a best friend, and that's enough for some people, and that's okay. They don't need to
That's a really good point.
Not everybody needs to create a YouTube channel about it.
There's no mission there, is there? You know, sometimes it is, like you say, just that you choose that way of speaking.
So there's no judgment on people that choose not to do it, as long as they are speaking enough to not have this contained and they're holding it all together that way. But for what was your question again?
But I suppose really it's about when you're in, you know, most of us are in business to achieve something, to whether it's financial or there's a why, there's a purpose behind it. And I've never spoken about it at all, about silencing yourself. And I'm finding it really interesting talking about that with you now. So it's making me think of lots of things that may be in my life that I've silenced. I'm not sure whether I'm quite ready to go there, if that makes sense. And you know, finding that courage or looking at what are the consequences, if you like, of going through each path. It's making me think about that a lot. So it's helping me, without even realising, having a chat about this has made me really reflect a lot more deeply about maybe where I've silenced myself over the years. I've definitely been guilty, like many agents and people in business, of being a people pleaser. And that's really not helped me. It's helped me and it hasn't helped me.
Might help you in the very, very short term.
A
Doesn't
lot of
help you in the long
short-term
run.
stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I've learned something. It's just taken me back to the emotional thing. My job is not to manage other people's emotions.
Mm-hmm.
And I've had that as my mantra for about 12 months
Mm-hmm.
because I used to try and manage other people's emotions.
Yeah.
So I would try and temper down my feedback
Mm-hmm.
in a way that would make it land more politely.
Well, the interesting thing is when somebody says, there's this thing I need to say to Joe Bloggs, whatever.
Yeah.
But if I say it, Joe Bloggs is going to get upset.
Yeah.
So first of all, you need to look at the delivery and if you're going to say it in a way that's likely to upset them. But if Joe Bloggs then gets upset, how is it that you feel in that moment? Often they think, well, it'll make me feel bad. That's what they're trying to avoid.
Yeah.
People often think it's all about upsetting the other person.
No.
It's because when they upset the other person,
How do
they
I
feel like shit.
Yeah.
So therefore, that's the feeling. So I'm not saying that they don't care about the other person. It's normally a combination of both. I don't want to upset them. But the reason why they don't want to upset them is because when they're upset, they get upset. So it's actually a fear of their own emotions when they see the other person upset. So it's two-pronged. It's not just about... But people convince themselves it's all about them. Whereas actually, if you were saying it to somebody that you really disliked and you didn't actually give a monkeys about how they felt, which I know there's probably an extreme case, but just for effect, you might get the point. It's a lot easier to say it because you're not going to have that reaction in here as well. So it's a heightened level of awareness that people start realising it's not just about them. It's my own emotions that I'm trying to protect. It's my own emotions that I'm trying to avoid. And actually, if you're okay with being uncomfortable and you're okay with the consequences of that, then it becomes less of a burden to carry other people's, as long as you can be sure that you've delivered it with integrity and kindness. If you just attack somebody, that's not okay to go, well, it's just how they feel. It's as long as you can be sure that I couldn't have said it any better, but I needed to get this off my chest. But if I then say this thing and they get upset, that's on them. But I'm still going to be comfortable with that. But then you can navigate through that. And if you're open enough, you can say, look, I'm uncomfortable too, sharing this with you, like how you respond and how you feel. It affects me too. I don't like seeing you cry. I don't like seeing you angry. I don't like seeing these things. And you can navigate through the difficulty emotionally together. But if you just attack each other, you're basically just putting your guard up and throwing your crap onto them.
Yeah, I've definitely learned that.
It's that openness from the beginning. This is how I see it. This is how I feel about it. This is what I want. Oh, now you're upset. Well, let's talk about that because I'm upset that you're upset. So let's be open about the fact that we're both upset now. How can we fix that? How can we move forward? Because despite our emotions, we need to fix this thing. And that's where I think most people get it wrong. They see difficult conversations as, what's the word I'm looking for? Almost like I have to win. They have to come round to my way of thinking. Actually, it's not about turning the other person around. It's just you expressing your truth in a way of honesty and integrity and kindness.
Yeah, and it shows up in so much of what we do. For me, it has, and I'm working on it, improving on it because I'm aware of it first, and I think that's a big step. The second thing is knowing that actually they're healthy. They're a healthier route forward to solve problems, to overcome situations, or to help someone to their outcome. It's actually the delivery or the way in which I do that, and I think that what you shared earlier is a really cool way of helping people to invest in that sort of approach, if you like. I popped a question about your own personal challenges, of which you've already shared a pretty heavy one. And I say it's heavy, but it obviously seems pretty heavy to listen to. But you spend your life helping people have difficult conversations. Outside of maybe the one that we've just had, what's a conversation you've personally avoided?
Telling my folks around my justice system.
Okay.
So I held that back until I was 43. It was, 2023 when I told them. So 2 years before I actually went to court. But for the same reasons, I knew it would break the heart. I knew that they would have a difficult time hearing it. I knew that it would, be something that they'd potentially beat themselves up about. And again, I was trying to avoid how they felt. Exactly the same thing, because I knew that I'd feel like crap if I saw my parents be really upset by it. So I decided that as soon as the CPS took on my case, because it took 4 years for the CPS to actually take it on, with the police and gathering evidence and all the investigation part. But once it was official, it was going to court. It's like, I can't can't go to Crown Court, and my parents like, no, that's ridiculous. So as soon as the CPS
Did you
took it on,
contemplate that?
yeah, well, that was the plan initially. I thought when I first started this, I'm just going to go on my own, and nobody needs to know, and I just need to get it out of me, and I don't need to disturb anybody else's life. But it's too big.
Yeah.
There's a completely ridiculous belief that I could do that, but it was enough to get me over the line to go to the police, if nothing more. But that was the most difficult conversation, is telling my folks,
Well,
because they knew him, and he was a family friend, and they'd let him in the house, and I knew that they'd, beat themselves up about it.
Well, I mean, how did that conversation go? As expected, I suppose. It was probably just, were they shocked, I suppose?
My mum, I made a video on this, but my mum sunk her head in her hands and just said, oh my God, Angie, just shaking her head. And my dad's face just kind of went, because he was leaning in, because they were both curious, because they're like, what is this thing she says she needs to tell us, thinking I was going to be pregnant or like getting married or something. I was like, no, it's nothing like that. Don't, you're not going to work it out. But then I saw my dad's face go white. He just leant back in his seat and he just went white and he just went ashen. And then it was probably a few seconds pause, but it felt like about an hour. And then I can't say exactly how long after, but shortly after, I remember his face being red with anger. Yeah. And then then my mum was in and out of tears, and I'd arranged it that my brother dialed into the call because it was on Zoom, because I couldn't get a free weekend with them because we're all so busy. So my brother dialed into the call, and I'd only told him 2 weeks ago beforehand as well. My sister was a witness. She'd known for 20 odd years. I told her when I was about 20 years old. So the remaining of my family members, apart from my sister, it was all fresh to them. So naturally, when I've prepared for something, I mean, it took me 23 years to go to the police, and it was 4 years after that. So, 27 years at this point. And then I dropped this huge hand grenade into my family and say, hey, remember when I was 16 and all that weird stuff was going on with my behaviour? This is this is what it was all about. And it's obviously going to be difficult for them. So there was tears, there was anger, there was regret, there was remorse, there was endless conversations. Like, I'm a talker, my family are all talkers. You imagine what we're like when we get together.
You could do a live stream, couldn't you?
Just ongoing conversation.
Yeah, just ongoing.
So,
well, it's what I sense from you going through what you've been through, and certainly watching your journey. Like I said, I first started following you on LinkedIn, and you coming through this place that nobody else would have obviously understood or even recognised, is the sense of freedom and liberation.
Yeah.
And I really am pleased that that's got to where you are now.
Yeah.
And really appreciate you sharing so much of that with us today. But the bigger bit around it for us as a viewer or listener or watcher is to really understand that life, let's be honest, we're not here forever, are we?
No. In the scheme of the world, it's like a speck in the ocean, isn't it? Like a tiny drop in the ocean. Just literally here for 80, 90 years when the earth goes on for gazillions of years.
And it's like, so what am I doing? What do I want to do? Now, you had a little bit of a spell in your van, you called it. It's not a van though, is it really?
Which one? That one?
The big one.
Oh, the big one, motorhome.
Yeah, travelling around.
Yeah.
What was that like?
Interesting.
Get to learn a lot.
Yeah, so, I sold my house before I went to court because I honestly, and I'm not saying I need to make this clear in case it gets heard, but I'm not saying that anything would have happened to my house. But when you go to court against somebody and you're at risk of sending someone to prison, you could have found me quite easily on where I lived online or whatever. So I just thought, I'm not going to stay in this house. So I sold my house. I personally, and this is probably the wrong person to speak to about this, but I don't have a massive faith in the future of the property market not dropping for quite some bit. So I thought, I don't want to buy again. The next time I buy again will be hopefully in Portugal. Yeah. But I want to be in the UK for a while, but I'm always moving around. So I bought a massive motorhome to travel around in. It is like a truck.
How many metres again?
8, including the bit on the back. So yeah, it's huge. But it's been fun. But my biggest lesson in it was unfortunately, when I bought it, we had 90 days straight of rain. Literally 90 days of rain. And you think about camping, you think about vans, you have this image of being in fields and
fire
and this is toasty with a nice chilled cider or whatever, mojito. But no, you're sat in a van with it absolutely belting down. It's so noisy you can't even make a phone call. You're 4 miles away from the closest shop and you're starving and you think this isn't actually all that luxurious. So it has been brilliant on occasion. Yeah. But there's been parts that I always expected rain. We live in England, but I didn't expect 90 days day in, day out of rain, and it definitely ruined the winter for me. So I will never, and I repeat, never do a winter in a van again. I'll either be abroad or I'll be in an Airbnb and I'll sauna it or something.
That's it. Job done. Or do some dog sitting.
Oh yeah, exactly. Exactly. Give me a dog and I'm happy.
Yeah. So taking, like, just because obviously you've given up your time to say, I mean, the kind of, you're at a bit of a point of where do you, because you've done a lot with CEOs, confidence building in people and that kind of place, and teaching people to be more assertive and things. What's your gut saying about where you're going next? Do you have any ideas?
I've got lots of irons in the fire. Let's say that. I don't want to talk about them too much because they're still in their infancy. Yeah. My dedication right now is all about my YouTube channel. Yeah. I'm not doing it to be a YouTuber. I highly doubt a topic of rape is going to become a YouTube channel of a YouTuber. I mean, the next Joe Rogan on exactly, but it's there for the people that need it. So that's my priority right now. I am looking into some work with camper vans because I've had a van for 15 years. I'm van mad. I don't want to live in a van anymore, but there's some other stuff that I'm looking at. There's some travel work that I'm looking at. I want to be doing some speaking around like the cost of silence and maybe into corporations and the impact of their staff when they're not doing it. So many different, where I see myself in a year is probably having 4 or 5 different revenue streams, all doing bits and bobs of each.
Well, because we've spent a lot of time on the cost of silence and then looking at that in the workplace, I feel it would be appropriate for us to look at that and talk about that a bit more. What sort of work would you do in an organisation to help them to navigate through when you realise the amount of emotion that's probably locked away?
Yeah. Well, I'm stepping away from coaching, not because I don't enjoy it, just because I'm glued to my laptop every day and it's such a bind, and I prefer the freedom, we're all freedom mad.
Yes.
So as much as I love the topic and the psychology behind it and helping people and getting the results that I did, I just don't want to be glued to my laptop anymore. But in terms of helping corporations, like you've mentioned, to me, it's going to be one of 2 ways. It'll either be on stage talking through my journey and explaining the impact and the cost of silence and the consequences of the cost of silence, or it'll be running a workshop where it's very engaging. I'll be giving them different exercises to highlight their own, where they're actually holding themselves back. And everybody's cost of silence will be different. For some people, it might be hindering their progression in their career because they're not speaking up enough, they're not being assertive enough, they're not putting their views across enough, and they're not being seen enough, basically. For other people, the cost of silence might be they're in a very coercively controlled relationship that they now need to break away from. Somebody else, it might be they're a survivor of PTSD from being in war or something, or like an army man or whatever. Everybody's story could be hugely different, but the impact is, the psychology behind the cost of silence is the same. But from a business perspective, it's more around how people then hold themselves back, that stop people working together as easily. People stop sharing information. People burn out because they're not sharing how burnt out they are. They go home, they work weekends and evenings. Maybe they've got a difficult team member and they're not speaking up about them, and they're getting really stressed and they're thinking of leaving the team or whatever it might be. Maybe somebody isn't delivering, but they're not speaking to them about it. And the stress that person will carry, I've seen it with my clients, like the worry that they have around having this one conversation, and the freedom that they have when they finally have that. And once you have a team that can communicate well, business is so much easier. So that's how it fits into a business perspective. But personally, I'm more emotionally attached to the people that have real deep issues with this cost of silence rather than it just being a corporate issue. Yeah. It plays into that area, but people that, anybody that's being suicidal is suffering with the cost of silence. Anybody that is self-harming is suffering with the cost of silence. Yeah. Anybody that, could probably do with some professional help but isn't taking it is dealing with the cost of silence. Or they're using other things like escapism, drugs, smoking, drinking, whatever it might be.
Yeah, that's massive. Like you say, it's the consequences, isn't it? It's huge. And I don't think people realise it is because of the silence. And I don't think
it's
they
the
realise.
Silence, but then what does the silence trigger? It's the shame, because you're only silent about something that you're shameful of.
Okay.
You're not silent about the fact that you own the gigs group.
No.
You're not silent around the fact that you've got a green shirt on, like whatever, because you're not.
Do you like it?
Yeah, it's all right, it's all right. I'm not really massively into shirts, but whatever.
We're green today. Look, we're matching. But no, you're right. It's a shame thing.
Because the silence causes the shame, and it's the shame that erodes them from the inside, and that's the part that people aren't even aware of. That's the unconscious part. The the shame that starts building and eroding them and grows over time if it isn't looked into. But the shame of not speaking up about a team member, the shame is this big. It's uncomfortable, it's inconvenient, it's not ideal, but it's not a deal breaker. The shame of something that you feel that if people know about this, it will change how they view me for the rest of their lives. That's a big burden to carry. That's a huge amount of shame. And the more you hide it, the more you're effectively communicating with yourself, not necessarily directly in words, but the implications that you're telling yourself are, this part of me is so shameful, nobody can know about it. And if anybody knows about it, it will be bad. It's a bad thing for people to know about. And that's the part that does the damage. And the silence is the symptom of the shame, if that makes sense.
It makes complete sense. Yeah. And again, you know, like I said, it's a really, because you're working your way back from something that doesn't seem too much, but actually it makes sense when you kind of go through those layers.
Break it down.
Yeah, it does. It really does. I'm kind of going back to assertiveness, because I think there's a common misconception in our industry that people feel it's conflict.
God,
we worked on this.
We did, yeah. It's a very common human belief. Assertiveness does not mean conflict. In fact, assertiveness in my books means conflict resolution.
Yeah.
It's speaking your truth and what you want.
It's
totally different. But most people think, yeah, I'm assertive. I told my wife she was fat and she needed to get on I was like, that's not assertive, that's cruel.
Yeah.
You know, there's a big difference between assertive and speaking your truth. But your truth isn't then to tell somebody what they are and what they're doing. It's your truth is the consequence of what they're doing and how you react to it. That's the only thing you can ever speak with certainty around, with 100% truth, is how you're interpreting it and how you feel about it.
Yeah, because it's really that sentence that you used earlier about your feelings or your observations. Just remind me of
Interpretations.
Your interpretations is a really good way of beginning that process in a conversation. And obviously, you know, you've been through some challenges and building your own business and personal brand, but what would you say has been the toughest challenge?
I think the toughest challenge for me, in terms of building my own business and so
or personal brand.
Yeah, sure.
Both, I suppose.
I think one of the reasons why I've stepped away from LinkedIn more is because, and I can even name the month that this happened, but August 2024, I got a phone call on the Friday at 3:00 when I was due in Crown Court on Monday to say it'd been postponed by 9 months, and I've been waiting 5 years at this point, just shy of 5 years. And then I had to wait another 9 months, and even then it could easily be knocked on, and I just didn't have any more to give. I was just so broken from everything, and the imbalance between the way that he was being treated, the way I was being treated, what he was allowed access to, what I wasn't allowed access to, it was infuriating, but regardless. And at that point, I was just so desperate to be rid of this thing from my life. It came to the closest of me pulling out of the system, but long story short, it didn't. In terms of my biggest challenge, it was dealing with that and maintaining a business when everybody was hailing me a hero and, oh, you're so strong and you're a confidence coach and you're an assertiveness coach. And yet I'm talking here around speaking up, and I was the most suppressed out of everybody that I knew because I couldn't talk about this thing. But I couldn't bring myself to take a selfie with a smile on it for a social media post. So I was dragging up old pictures from 2 years ago, 1 year ago. I was taking professional pictures from a photo shoot, and I stopped posting around my story and my life or whatever I might have been up to. I was just making it educational. 3 ways to beat procrastination, 3 ways to stop, I don't know, people pleasing, or just boring stuff that I thought was boring. Just because I couldn't share what was really going on. And I just realised at that moment how utterly artificial and fickle this world that we were living in social media. And yet I still go on social media, but I insist that if I'm going to do it now, I'm going to be this version of me. But at the time, people saw me this really together.
You owe it, don't you?
And I was really together. I was emotionally grounded, but I was dealing with something that very few people have to deal with. Childhood trauma, I didn't even know a first thing about it, but I was dealing with that.
Yeah.
I was having PTSD attacks, never had that before. I was having flashbacks, stuff I'd never had that before. They were happening to me in Tesco's aisles, where I was literally started throwing up in the aisle because I was having this huge PTSD attack. And then I come back on LinkedIn and I was like, oh, Angie, you're doing great. And I'm thinking, oh my God, I can't do it.
Yeah.
It's so false. It's so fickle. It's not who I am. So I started having to disengage from this fake world of this is the branding and this is how I want everybody to see me, because like I want you to see me of who I am, and I can't. So the hardest part for me was dealing with all of that shit
massively,
and maintaining this really confident, really bouncy, really no water off my back, which it was for a long time. That was the truth. It wasn't like I was faking that part of me, but this was the most difficult period of my life, and I couldn't even talk about it, and yet I had to maintain the previous image, and I couldn't even say what was actually really happening. And I would say things like, I'm having a difficult time, I've got some personal things going on, but people thought, oh yeah, she's got a spot on her nose or something. I don't know, like probably something really shallow.
Yeah, they wouldn't.
Actually, they had nobody had any conception apart from my family how bad it was.
Yeah.
You know, I'd never had a panic attack ever, apart from when I was about 10 or something, when I got thrown into a swimming pool when I wasn't ready to do it. But the stuff that I was dealing with, I remember one, for example, it's been totally vulnerable here, but I started having a panic. I was crying. I was in my parents' living room. I was just there with my mum. I started crying, it got too much. I started having this panic attack. But when I started doing it, my neck was closing up. So I was like gasping for air, and it completely closed. And I thought, holy shit, I'm going to die.
God.
I cannot breathe. I cannot get any air in my lungs.
Which only makes you panic even more.
Makes you panic even more, exactly. So everything was heightened. And thank God my mum's a therapist and she's very good at dealing with these things. She was clearly very distressed. But then she was kneeling next to me on the floor, just saying, Angie, calm, breathe. And then she started crying, which then made me more panicky again.
Oh my God.
And it was all very dramatic, and it's not the best story of my life. But what I'm saying is, like, this stuff, I hadn't dealt with at age 16. And it was now coming out of me.
Coming out of you, yeah.
And I didn't even know a first
Your
thing
body
about this
carries
stuff.
emotions.
The body holds the score, right?
Yeah.
So this is the life I was leading in August 2024. And I remember making a post saying, I've had some really shit news and I'm going out in my van and I'm just going to travel around the UK. And that was me breaking away from it. That shit news was this. But when everybody thought, oh, you're living the life of freedom and you're going to have a whale of a time and you're going to go around the country in your van. No, I was on my parents' living room floor having panic attacks. That was the life I was leading. And yet there I was on LinkedIn the next day going, three ways to do it. I was like,
Jesus Christ.
I was like, I can't live like this.
I think a lot of people would resonate with that.
Well, this is the thing, because I've
like
been more open about it.
Bit.
I've had people come to me and going, I'm so glad you said that, because last week I had to just take an old post from 5 years ago and hit copy paste because I couldn't sleep because of this thing happened, or I couldn't do this thing. And it's actually really common. And this is the part I hate about social media.
I hate that as well. You know, like I said about going to Ireland, it's like, this is me.
Yeah, exactly.
That's
like it or lump it.
Bottom line is, this is me. And if you like me, you can have some free training videos. That's basically what we've done,
exactly
isn't it? Do you know what I mean? And I want to have a bit of fun, because Ollie and I share the same values around, we want to enjoy what we do.
Exactly.
That's got to be more important than most things.
Mm-hmm.
And, we're starting like a community and all of this kind of stuff for agents, because I've got 31 years of fuck-ups and successes. And I think we can make people's journeys a lot better.
Yep.
And hopefully they can get there a lot faster. But, to what I've got around that part around your social media thing is that I see it in people. I went to a spiritualist years ago, and it was probably, I've been God knows how many times since, because it was actually one of the steps of helping me deal with the loss of my brother. Mm-hmm. Knowing that he was there and, that kind of thing. I won't go into it massively today, but I remember 2 or 3 years ago, and she goes, I can't remember what she called it now, but like, it's just, I feel like I can feel a lot more of what's going on around me. I don't know what the word is. Can't remember what she said, because I gave her some examples. And it feels like, for me, I suppose hitting 50 now, it's like, what have I got to lose by just be yourself? Be real. Just this. I always thought I was, but I wasn't when you kind of you go back.
That's exactly it. So if you'd have said to me, say 3 or 4 years ago, are you being your authentic self? I was. Yeah. For who I knew of myself at that point. Time. So it's not that I was hiding this other side to me for years and years and years. What you saw on LinkedIn was exactly who I was. But then I went through this huge period, and all that stuff with the panic attack stuff, that's all stopped, like, completely. I don't even remember the last time I had one. It's like probably early 25, so over a year ago. But it was a period I had to go through, and it was an emotional state I had to go through. And now I've gone through that, it has without question changed me. And then people still associate who I am now to the old Angie. I'm calmer. I don't want to play roller derby anymore. I played that for 12 years, and it's reckless, and it was fun, and it was brutal, and it was aggressive. But I don't want to break my body in the same way that I used to want to be reckless and fly and jump off cliffs in the same way I used to. I want to still do some fun stuff, and I'm still a bit of an adrenaline junkie, but my whole personality has changed. But I had to go through this transition. But if you don't go into that space and you block it, it's a form of going back into the space of silence. And that's when you start having issues, like with heart issues or other diseases that start coming through your body. Sorry. But I think it's so damaging for you to not actually let that out, because that's part of the healing. But most people, they don't front it, because it's like you have to go into a darker place to come out to a happier place. So you talking then about your emotions. My emotional bandwidth has expanded tenfold. I feel more broadly. So when I get upset about something, I'll feel it more intensively. So that's why I feel more emotions about it. But then I can feel happier than I ever used to feel happier too. So it's not that everything else was fake before. It's just I've grown, and my bandwidth of emotions has grown with that, which changes how I communicate. It changes the things I want to do. It changes the hobbies. It changes the friendship groups I have. Some of my friends have changed a lot over people that I now just don't connect with. I don't have the same frequency as now, so I just don't gel with them in a way I used to. You change your frequency. When you change yourself, you change your frequency. You attract different things. You attract different opportunities. Everything changes.
Yeah, it does. It really does. And you're in control of that.
100%. But it takes the bravery wasn't reporting it. The bravery was like, this is a very difficult emotion. Do I go into it and have a really, really difficult time for a few months and pop out, or do I avoid it and block it?
It's like a fork in the road, isn't it?
Yeah.
You're going to go two ways.
It's like sliding doors.
Sliding doors.
A little bit.
You've got better analogies than I have. Yeah.
Oh, that's my job.
Glad you said it. I really feel like this has been amazing, actually, and getting to talk through a lot more about the stuff that maybe we needed to talk to than maybe we set out to talk about. Yeah. And I actually would prefer that, if I'm being honest.
On the fly?
On the fly, yeah. Angie's going to be still on LinkedIn?
I'm going to be back there. I assume that's the plan, but I need to get this other stuff off my... I need to get it done. My life won't let me carry on until I've just had this freedom of speaking my story and my truth, and my message is there for those who need it. Yeah. If you don't need it, don't come near it. This isn't a pitch to get loads of followers. It's a pitch for the right people.
I agree. And I think if there's anyone that's listened to this today that's thinking this type of thing, the silencing consequences of silence... is a really good cultural thing or good cultural fit, they should reach out to you. I loved this conversation.
Cool.
And it's been really good fun and really, really interesting and inspiring at the same time. So thank you so much for watching. Thanks for giving up your time as well.
Welcome.
We'll go and grab a bite to eat and a coffee. And I'll see you on the next one.